Starting up the A-18 Hornet in DCS world, on land and on the boat. Let's start!
Before we start, we need to bind a few buttons, starting with the cage/uncage button. By default, it is set to C on your keyboard, but you can also bind it to a simple push button on your stick or throttle. Next is the undesignate/nose wheel steer switch. By default, it is bound to S on your keyboard, and again you can bind it to a simple push button on your stick or throttle. Next, we need the throttle designator controller, or TDC, and for the startup we need the up, down, left and right buttons. You can use the default buttons on the keyboard right here, or you can bind them to a 4-way hat on your stick or throttle. Alternatively, you can go to Axis Commands and find the axis for the throttle designated controller right here and bind it to a thumbstick if you have one on your stick or throttle. Finally, and we will only use this for the carrier startup, you need the trimmer switch. For the startup, we will only use push and pull for nose up and nose down, but you can bind the rest of them again to a 4-way hat on your stick or throttle, or just use the default keybinds on the keyboard.
Right, let's start it up. Battery switch on. Turn on the APU. And while it's starting, we can close the canopy by left clicking this switch right here. Press and hold. Canopy is coming down. And can release the button now. With the APU's green light, you can start cranking the right engine by right-clicking this switch right here. Engine's RPM and temps will start rising. At 25% or above RPM, you can push the right throttle to the idle position by pressing right shift and home on your keyboard. RPMs, temps, and fuel consumption will start rising rapidly. In the meantime, you can start the SAI by rolling it down and back up onto the horizon.
Roll left, roll left. Flight controls, flight controls.
When you hear these auditory cues, the right engine is completely up and you can start cranking the left one by left clicking this engine crank switch. Again, RPMs will start rising. In the meantime, I'll turn on the left DDI, right DDI, MPCD, and the HUD. At 25% RPM or more, push the left throttle to idle by pressing right alt and home. RPMs, temps, and fuel consumption for the left engine will start rising rapidly. As you can see, our displays and HUD are up and running now. And with the AMPCD on, you can move the INS knob to ground and select stored heading for a much quicker alignment. Turn on the internal lights from this panel right here. I like it nice and bright. And right here you can turn on the external lights. The formation lights stay off for the day. You can turn them on for nighttime. At the far back left side, turn on OBOGs, onboard oxygen generating system. You can hide the stick by clicking on its base, and now to start the RWR, push the ALR67 power button, move the ECM knob to standby and dispenser to on or bypass. When INS shows OK, you can set the INS knob to IFA. While we're here, set radar to operate, and if you're carrying the lightning targeting pod or AT FLIR, set FLIR to standby or on to have it ready for when you need it. You can bring back the stick by again clicking on its base if you want. Now let's turn on IFF by clicking on the IFF button, then press and hold on off, then data link, press and hold on off, data link again, press and hold on off. And if you want to increase the UFC's brightness or decrease it, you can do it with this knob right here. I'll push it all the way up. Uncage the radar altimeter by right clicking and rolling it up to whatever altitude you want it to warn you when you pass it. I'll set it to 500. You can turn on the HMD by rolling up this knob right here. There you go, HMD is up and running. Now we need to test and align it. So if you're not already on the bit page, go to the support menu by clicking this menu button until you see SUPT, and then at the top select bit. Select displays at the top right and HMD at the top right, and the HMD will start its test. And once it's done cycling through all these shapes, you can press the stop button at the top right, go into menu again, you go into the support page, HMD, and at the bottom left, select align. Align the cross on the HUD with the cross on the HMD, and when you've got them on top of each other, it doesn't have to be perfect, press and hold the cage on cage button. Once it says align OK, release, and now you need to align the top cross with the middle of the big cross using the throttle designator controller switch. Press the cage on cage button, and now you need to align the bottom cross with the big cross, so I'll just put it on it. There we go. Now when I'm done with that, deselect the line, and the HMD is good to go. If you want the RWR to be projected on the HUD and helmet mounted display, you can go into the EW page and box HUD. On the right DDI, let's go into the support menu again, select FCS page, and you can see all these X's right here that are indicating some errors. To reset these errors, press and hold this button right here, and while we're here, press and hold the takeoff trim button. Also set hook bypass to field, landing taxi lights on, and the flap switch to half. With that, all the errors will be gone, and you need to confirm 12, 30, 30, 30, 12. Make sure that the flap switch is in the half position. On the left DDI, go to the tactical page, TAC, and select HUD for the HUD repeater. Now all that's left to do is arm the ejection seat, lock the shoulder harness, disengage the parking brake by left clicking it, and confirm that nose wheel steering is on. If it's not, press the nose wheel steering button. It should be S by default on the keyboard. And now we are good to taxi. Right, so let's take a look at the differences when starting off of a boat. First of all, through the communications menu, make sure to remove the wheel chocks.
Chief, remove the wheel chocks. Copy. Wheel chocks are now removed.
And let's close the canopy so you can actually hear me. Remember that you need your canopy open if you don't have your engines on for the ground crew to hear you. Now, most of it is the same, so I will only show you the differences. For the first difference, when you want to start the INS alignment, make sure to set it to CV and not ground, and you can still use stored heading to make the alignment much quicker. Next difference is to keep hook bypass on carrier. Don't turn on the landing and taxi light. Make sure anti-skid is off, and while we're here, you do still need to set flaps to half. Next up, go to the support menu and into the checklist at the top right, and check the weight of the aircraft. Up to 44,000 pounds, you need to set the stabilizers to 16 degrees nose up. From 45 to 48,000 pounds, you need to set them to 17 degrees nose up. And from 49 and above 1,000 pounds, you need to set them to 19 degrees nose up. Right now I'm at 44,000, so I will set them to 16 by pressing the nose up trim button. This will also be reflected in the FCS page by 16 at the end instead of 12. Now I'll disengage the parking brake by left clicking it again, and for the nose wheel steering, if your wings are folded up like that, and you press the nose wheel steering button, it will go into the nose wheel steering high gain mode, which makes it much easier when moving on top of the carrier deck. If your wings are not folded up, you need to press and hold this nose wheel steering button for it to stay in the high gain position. Now I'll just advance the throttles and go towards my catapult. The director will now tell me to open up my wings, right click this lever right here until it goes to spread, and then roll it forward with your mouse wheel. Now the wings are coming down, and I can continue with the launch procedure. Lower the launch bar, advance forward, raise the launch bar, start revving up, controls wipe, and salute. Let's go. Wheels up, flaps up, and you're good to start your mission. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you found this helpful. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. In the first link in the description, I'll have a startup checklist I've made for you to download, so feel free to use it. And when you're back to your carrier, just make sure to land safely.